Barry Sherman and Honey Sherman were one of Canada's wealthiest couples, with an estimated net worth of up to $3.2 billion. He was the founder and longtime leader of Apotex, a major generic drug company, and she was a prominent Canadian philanthropist, socialite, and community leader. But on Friday, December 15, 2017, Barry, 75 years old, and Honey, age 70, were found in the basement pool area of their North York home. Investigators believe they may have been dead for as long as 40 hours before they were discovered. This is Murder Vault Chronicles. This is the story of Barry and Honey Sherman. Barry Sherman, born Bernard Charles Sherman in Toronto, Canada, built his fortune in an industry where timing, patents, and litigation can decide who dominates the market and who is pushed out. He studied engineering at the University of Toronto and later earned a PhD at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. After completing his education, he entered the pharmaceutical business. Eventually, he founded Apotex in 1974, building it into one of the most powerful generic drug companies in Canada, with products sold internationally. Generic pharmaceuticals are a high-stakes business. Competition is intense, the regulatory environment is strict, and legal disputes are common, especially when major money is on the line. Over time, Barry developed a reputation for being exceptionally combative in business. Supporters described him as relentless and strategic. Critics described him as ruthless. As a result, he accumulated extraordinary wealth and influence, doing so in a way that created adversaries over the decades. Honey Sherman, born Anna Deborah Reich in Austria, built a distinct public identity. She was raised in Canada after her parents fled the Holocaust. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Toronto and also attended the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education for a degree in education. She was widely known in Toronto as a philanthropist and community figure, active in charity circles and prominent events. While Barry was often described as private and highly work-focused, Honey was described as opinionated, thoughtful, practical, and modest despite her affluence. Their names appeared across major institutions, not just in business coverage, but also in philanthropy, education, and medical research. Honey and Barry met in August 1970. She was 23 and he was 28. Less than a year later, they married on July 2, 1971. Together, they had 4 children, 1 son, Jonathan, and 3 daughters, Lauren, Alexandra, and Kaylin. As Apotex expanded, the Shermans became billionaires, with Barry's fortune closely tied to the company and its related holdings. They were not just wealthy, they were influential, widely recognized in Canada's business and philanthropic circles, and deeply connected to major institutions across the country. But on Friday, December 15, 2017, Barry and Honey Sherman's story took a dark turn when they were found dead inside their Toronto house in North York, a neighborhood known for privacy and high-value estates. The property at 50 Old Colony Road was a 12,000-square-foot residence with 6 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms. It also included an indoor pool, a tennis court, and underground parking for up to 6 vehicles. According to early reports, a real estate agent arrived to prepare the property for a showing since the house had been listed for sale and discovered the bodies. In the earliest stages of the investigation, there was public speculation about a possible murder-suicide, but autopsy findings later determined that both Barry and Honey Sherman were strangled. Police described the deaths as a targeted double murder, indicating investigators believe the victims were selected intentionally rather than this being random violence. The timeline became one of the most unsettling elements. Although the Shermans were found on December 15th, investigators believe the killings occurred earlier, most likely on December 13th, 2017. It is not a precise measurement, but it is significant. For a substantial window of time, 2 of the country's most prominent figures were dead inside their home before anyone found them. The scene itself also became a defining part of the public conversation. Police believe that the bodies were positioned in a way that appeared staged, suggesting an attempt to mislead investigators. It can also suggest comfort in the environment, enough time and control to manipulate how the scene would be discovered. Access is another core question. Early reporting noted that there was no immediate sign of forced entry. That does not automatically mean the killer was personally known to the victims. but it does narrow the range of possibilities. It raises practical questions about how someone could enter, move through the home, and leave without immediate detection. In cases involving wealthy victims, this often leads investigators to examine routines, patterns, schedules, and possible vulnerabilities, including who had access, who knew the layout, and who could approach the couple without raising alarm. On December 21, 2017, more than 10,000 people, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, attended the funeral for Barry and Honey Sherman, where their son Jonathan eulogized his parents. In the months after the killings, speculation intensified as investigators released few details, and no arrests were made. One of the primary theories centered on business conflict, given Barry Sherman's long career in a highly competitive, litigation-heavy industry. The first motive lane is business conflict. Barry Sherman operated in a world shaped by patents, legal disputes, and high-dollar competition. Over a long career, that kind of environment creates winners and losers, and it can generate resentment that lasts for years. This lane stays present because it fits the scale of money involved, and because Sherman's business reputation suggests he was not a man who moved through his industry without leaving conflict behind. The second motive lane is money, estate pressure, and personal conflict. After the deaths, the Sherman estate became a major focus of attention, and public reporting described legal and interpersonal tensions in the aftermath. In any high-wealth case, the estate itself can become a battlefield. That does not explain the murders by itself, but it can reveal fractures, stressors, and disputes that investigators would consider when mapping motive. The third motive lane is targeted violence carried out by someone with familiarity, either with the home, the neighborhood, or the victim's routines. This lane is about logistics. The killer, or killers, selected a time when the couple could be approached, controlled, and killed without immediate discovery. The basement location, the time window, and the reported staging have all contributed to the belief that this was not spontaneous. Familiarity can be operational rather than personal. A person can know a schedule through surveillance. A person can learn entry points and patterns without being part of the household. As the years passed without an arrest, that prolonged silence became part of the story. In December 2021, 4 years after the murders, Toronto police released surveillance video of a person they described as a suspect in the Sherman double homicide investigation. Police asked the public to help identify the person by paying attention to the individual's gait. However, by late 2022, Toronto police had not identified or apprehended the suspect captured on video near the Sherman mansion around the time of the December 2017 murders. Despite releasing a 22-second clip of an individual with a distinct walk, investigators have been unable to determine the person's identity, gender, or location. The existence of the video also reinforces a central investigative question. If a person of interest or suspect was captured on camera, why has identification been so difficult? There are many explanations. The footage may be limited. The person may not be local. They may have changed their appearance. They may have lived a life with a minimal social footprint. Or, in the most operationally concerning explanation, the person may be exactly what a planned homicide would require. Someone who blends in, someone without an obvious trail, and someone capable of moving through a wealthy neighborhood without being remembered. The reward connected to the case became a headline of its own. The Sherman family publicized a reward of up to $35 million for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Rewards of that size are uncommon. They communicate both capacity and frustration. They also suggest the belief that someone, somewhere, knows something specific and is still choosing not to speak. So what can be concluded, clinically, without drifting into accusation? First, both deaths were homicides caused by ligature, strangulation. Second, investigators have described the case as targeted, which strongly suggests intentional selection rather than random violence. Third, the timeline suggests an attacker who created time, either through planning, surveillance, knowledge of routines, or a combination of all three. Fourth, the release of suspect footage indicates investigators believe at least one person's presence near the home is significant. And finally, the Sherman murders sit in a category that investigators dread. A high-profile, high-resource case where the public knows the victims, the public knows the basic outline of the scene, and the public can fill the gap. But the evidence that would withstand court scrutiny has not surfaced publicly. Barry Sherman spent decades winning in a system built on rules, documents, and legal thresholds. Honey Sherman spent decades building influence through institutions and community work. Their deaths left a case where the standard remains the same as every other homicide investigation. Not what people believe, not what people suspect, only what can be proven. Until that proof is presented in court, the story of Barry and Honey Sherman ends in a rare kind of silence, the kind that does not belong to a wealthy neighborhood, does not belong to a famous family, and does not belong to a case that has been in front of the public for years. As of February 2026, the investigation was active and ongoing. No suspects or persons of interest have been named since the murders occurred. The family deemed the house too painful to remain standing, and it was demolished in May 2019. In 2020, the vacant lot was sold for $4.25 million. This has been Murder Vault Chronicles. Please like and subscribe to the channel.